Today's learning should also be a halachos for Shlema for Yisrael Yosef ben Leah. Okay, we started yesterday the 7th Perek, which is really talking about making a Zimun. So the first Mishnah will be a little bit complicated. We'll go through it slowly.
Chapter?
It's chapter 7.
7.
Mishnah 1.
Mishnah.
Shloisha she'achluk achas chayavin l'zami. Right, the general heading of our Perek is 3 people that eat together. They have an obligation to make a Zimun to bench together. Achol demai, if they ate produce of which is uncertain whether trumas and maaser were taken because the owner is not particularly trustworthy, so that the Gemara says, since there's an exception in the rule of demai that a poor person is allowed to eat it. So since anyone could technically has the legal loophole of the ability to make themselves considered poor by being mafkir all their possessions, it's considered something that one's allowed to eat, and you would make a zimun afterwards. Maaser rishon shenit trumas, or if you have the first tenth that you take off and give to the Levi, and the truma which the Levi gives to the Kohen was separated from that, you could make a zimun on that. The Gemara explains it's even if you avoided giving the original truma, the original portion that was supposed to go to the Kohen, by giving the maaser before it had got to the point where it's considered grain, while there were still stalks before you had threshed and winnowed the grain. Maaser sheni hekdesh niftu, or if you ate maaser sheni, that the second tenth that was supposed to be brought up to Yerushalayim and eaten there, or something that a person had been hekdesh themselves and redeemed it, then you could make a zimun. And the Gemara explained that even if you paid only the principal and not the additional 25% that the one who had been hekdesh himself is supposed to give when they redeem it. Kezayis, or if you have a waiter who ate a kezayis, even though he's not so as set as part of the group as everybody else who's sitting at their tables and eating, but he could join for your zimun. Kusi and a kusi, so one of these people that in the times of the Tanakh, they were brought into Eretz Yisrael and they converted in not the most sincere way, still mizamnin aleim, all these people you could make a zimun with. Then the Mishnah has the flip side. Avol achol tevel. But if you ate grain that was tevel that had not had trumas and maaser separated, and the Gemara says even if the obligation to separate them was only derabbanan, or
sorry, which Mishnah are we in now?
Still in Mishnah is Aleph.
Oh, okay.
Maaser rishon shalinit l'trumasa, or if you ate maaser rishon that the truma maaser had not been separated, so the Gemara says that's obvious because as long as trumas maaser hasn't been separated from maaser, it's tevel, it's completely forbidden to eat. But it would be even if you took off maaser before truma, after that was already grain, after it was already threshed and winnowed, so it's at the point where it's obligated in truma, still that would be usher to eat, and you would not be able to make a zimun with it. Maaser sheni hekdesh shalei niftu, or if you ate this maaser sheni, the second tenth that you're supposed to take Yerushalayim and you had not redeemed it, or hekdesh that was not redeemed, those things are both forbidden to eat. And the Gemara says even if there was some attempt made to redeem it, but not properly by maaser sheni, where there's an obligation to use actual coined currency and not anything of value, if you had used something else, or by hekdesh, which you could redeem with anything of value, with the exception of land. So if you had attempted,
are you going through the Gemara now?
Yeah,
okay.
If you had attempted to redeem it on land, that would not work. And then if you have a waiter, but he didn't eat a kezayis, he wouldn't be able to count. V'hanachri, or a non-Jew, all these cases ein mezamnin aleim that you cannot make a zimun with. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Nashim v'avadim uktanim, women, slaves, and minors. Ein mezamnin aleim, you can't join them into your zimun. The Gemara does say that nashim and avadim could make an independent zimun if you have 3 of them, but the Rabbanan just wanted to discourage.
Now you're into the Gemara.
Now I'm in the Gemara, yes.
Okay.
The Gemara wanted to discourage the mingling of men, women, and slaves, so they said everyone should make their own independent zimun. Ad kama mizamnin, how much must you eat to make a zimun? Ad kezayis. You need to eat an olive's worth.
So if you were at a table with 3 women, and they would you leave while they did the?
You wouldn't have to leave, but they can't. I mean, it just the formality of you being part of their zimun makes more of a formality. They could, or women are never obligated to make a zimun, but they could if they wanted to make a zimun.
Okay.
Men and women cannot be part of each other's zimun.
No, right, they can't be part of the core requirement.
Did you ever
Right.
experience that?
No.
But in terms of women have their own zimun, that's more what we call modern groups.
More modern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeshiva I don't think ever does it, right?
I don't know.
But for example, let's
I'm
say
not
you have
there.
a family, especially like when women can answer.
Women can answer. Right. Women are
Or
obligated
when
to
you have
answer.
lunch
If you have 3 men, then women are obligated to answer to the zimun. But if you have 2 men and 2 women, then you do not make a zimun because we want to make a we want to kind of break up that.
Gotcha.
Let's say having a sandwich in our cars. That doesn't mean anything.
Yehuda Emrai Kibetzer. Yehuda requires one to eat more to make a zimun. He requires an egg's worth of bread twice as much. And Pascal Yehuda. Mishnah Gimel. Ketzad Mezamnin. So what is the text for a zimun? So we have a complicated Mishnah that is not as complicated when we get down to the practical halacha. Begimel Aimer Nevarech. If you have 3 people, he says, "Let us bless." Begimel Vahu. If there are 3 people without him, this Tana says, you say Baruchu. He tells the other 3 people, you guys should bless, because even without me, you would be able to have a zimun. Similarly, the same thing Basar. If you have 10 people, Amar Nevarech Elokeinu. Then he says, let us bless our God. When we add Elokeinu, we add Hashem's name when you have 10 people, because 10 people is always as a minion, and then you mention Hashem's name. Basar Vahu, if it's 10 people without him, Omer Baruchu, he tells them, you should bless Hashem, because they don't need him. So then we interject what...
Well, I don't understand. So he's there.
So he's leading.
He's leading. Okay.
So if this Tana holds the ideal thing to say is Baruchu, that you remaining group of people should bless.
Uh-huh.
The problem is you need a quorum for that to work. So if you don't have the quorum without him, he has to include himself. Mm-hmm. So he says Nevarech as in we will instead of you should.
Okay.
So then the Mishnah interjects, which is what we go with, Echad Asara Echad Eseri. But it doesn't matter if you have 10 or 10,000s or 100,000 people, you say the same text of Nevarech Elokeinu. Then we go back to the Tana who was talking, who does not agree with that statement. And he says, B'meya, if you have 100 people, you add more. Aimer Nevarech Hashem Elokeinu. You add another name of Hashem if you're up to 100 people. And then he continues with the original format, B'meya Vahu, if you have 100 without the leader. Aimer Baruch Hu, he says, you 100 should bless Hashem Elokeinu. Be'elef, if you have 1,000, Aimer Nevarech Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael. He adds more words. You should bless Hashem, our God, the God of Israel. Be'elef Vahu, if it's 1,000 without him, Aimer Baruch Hu, you should bless. Beribua, if you have 10,000, Aimer, then he says, you say Nevarech Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Tzvakos Yeshiv Akruvim. Alamazon Shachan. He says, you add now, bless Hashem our God, the God of Yisrael, the God of the heavenly hosts, who sits on the kruvim, on the food that we ate. Baruvahu, if it's 10,000 without him, Amr Baruch Hu, then he says, you should do it. Then, this is going back on the whole list, Ki'in and Shumavarach, whatever the leader says, Kach Einin Acharov, that's what they respond. So since the case we just mentioned was the case of 10,000, we go with the Mishnah says what we would respond with if there would be 10,000, it would be Baruch Hashem Elokeinu, Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Tzvakos Yeshiv Akruvim Alamazon Shachalnu. Then the Mishnah clarifies really what's going on. What we went back and forth over here. Rabbi Yosef Glili is the one who's the main Tan in this Mishnah who says, L'fi Raiv Hakal Hein Mevarchen. Based on how many people there are, you change the text. Shenam, like we have a verse that says, "B'makelois baruchu elikim Hashem imkar Yisrael." In groups, you should bless Hashem from the source of Yisrael. So based on the size of their group, Rabbi Yossi Kaglili says, is the text you say. And Amr Bikiva says no. Mamatzino Beis HaKnesses is just like you find in the shul. Echad Meruba v'Echad Muat. It doesn't matter whether you have 10 people or 10,000 people. Amar Baruch Hu es Hashem. We just say Baruch Hu es Hashem. We don't add any more words. So too by benching, you don't add any more words. And then Rabbi Shmuel Omer, in shul, you don't say Baruch Hu es Hashem. Rather, you say Baruch Hu es Hashem HaMavarach, which is what we do. And then the Gemara says that we also say that no matter what, we always would prefer to say Nevarech, because the leader should include himself in those who are going to be making the blessing. Therefore, much of this complication of this Mishnah falls away when we are left with our two options, right? If we have less than 3 to 10, between 3 and 9 people, we say Nevarech. If we have 10 or more, we add Elokeinu, and everyone responds based on what the leader said. Okay, stop here.